Chapter 1. A deafening roar filled my ears as we fell away from the edge of the Sky City Vanica. Kyroat banked to the left, letting the blast of magic hit him on the belly, blocking us from the worst of it. Hold tight. His command in my head was so powerful that I found myself obeying before he'd finished the order. We corkscrewed through the air and my world was a blur of orange fire, rending steel and a force so powerful that it was all I could do to cling to his back. Hubrick bucked and twisted in the saddle in front of me, his wiry frame moved almost fluidly despite the chaos, as if this was far from the first time he'd weathered such storms. Are you safe? Raolcan's thoughts had an edge of anxiety. He didn't need to be worried about me. I was more worried about the city behind us. The Dusk Covenant was destroying it one piece at a time. Sad enough that they were ruining such a mind-blowing structure and center of culture, even worse that there were thousands of innocent people within the city who didn't have the time or means to get out. Not everyone could fly away on dragon back. Kyroat's spin ended and I gathered my balance enough to look out across the afternoon vista. The sun was dipping toward the horizon and soon it would be nightfall. Where would we go? The city was in flames and filled with our enemies. We had no supplies, and already I felt the cold biting through my leathers. How would Raolcan feel, being carried in the mouth of a dragon? He's not fond of my breath and he thinks I'm drooling too much. Does he have any idea how hard it is to fly with your mouth open and not drool? He should try it. He should just be glad Raolcan was purple or he'd probably have been chomped in two by now. It's a favor to you, and to Savette. She likes him for some reason. I hadn't expected Raolcan to do Savette a favor. I'm growing fond of her. She might be cold and distant, but it's a shell around a very sensitive interior. I felt a pang of jealousy. Raolcan and our bond was supposed to be special. So, I can't be friends with anyone else. My cheeks felt hot despite the freezing cold. He could feel my jealousy. But how did you keep from feeling fear when it just welled up on its own? I'd saved Savette, and now I'd risked the one thing I had, his friendship. Two things. First, she saved you this time, so you're probably even. Second, you haven't lost my friendship. I can be her friend and yours at the same time. I'm a pretty amazing dragon that way. And just so you know, we have a bond that no one else can have. It doesn't matter who I am friends with, it won't lessen that. There was no one as good as Raolcan. Chastened, I watched where we were going and tried to push aside my embarrassment at being so foolish. Afreti led us toward the mountain foothills to the northeast like she had a place in mind. She was angling to a point where the forest cleared and a river ran through the snow, unfrozen so early into winter. I risked a look behind us. Dragons bubbled out of the Sky City like a pot boiling over and all around the perimeter, ropes and cables extended to the ground. We were too far by now to see the colors of the dragons that swirled around the city or the contents of the baskets and boxes being lowered to the ground. I fought a roiling belly as I thought of the panic that must fill those busy streets and the fear in the hearts of the people there. I should be there helping them. It wasn't fair that I was safe when so many others weren't. I'm glad you're safe. It's why I came for you. We can only do what we can. Maybe we could go back and ferry people to safety. Then what of Savette? She's still too full of magic. What about Raolcan? Your comrades will happily kill him if you don't stop them. What about Hubrick? Did you not swear to him? None of us can do everything, Spider. Crushing yourself under responsibilities that aren't yours is not wise. We sped toward the forest floor. I could make out a small farm along the bank of the river. Smoke billowed from a chimney and there were cleared animal pens, although I saw no animals. Someone stood in the farmyard looking up at us, as if waiting for us to land. Afreti descended first with her two dragons and Lenora's. Her dragons are twins. They can't bear to be separated. One of them should be carrying this foul-tasting prince. How had Raolcan brought them all in time to save us? I still didn't understand that. I was listening to Savette's thoughts while you were gone. Chaotic, yellow and black and white. She was worried about magic she sensed in the city. She could feel it like wells being tapped all around her with golden streams flowing upwards. They were drawing too much. Too much. It was filling her up, too. She didn't want it, but she couldn't stop. The magician, Zavon, who was helping her didn't believe it when she tried to warn him, but I did. I could feel it was real. He must have been scared. I knew I had to act. I spoke to the boy, Aldine, and he saddled us all and opened the doors. He took Dashira's dragon. We were preparing to leave when I could sense conflict above. Dashira was up there and Zavan and 2 others, enemies, maybe. Their thoughts were chaotic. There was golden light and a feeling of power, and then Savette came running down the steps to us and leapt on my back. I didn't wait. I could feel she was terrified. As we launched through the door, power surged behind us, ripping the place apart. We barely made it out alive. Enkane has an injured leg. How could Aldine ride Dashiva's dragon? She's his mother. Dragons respect blood, even whites. He's a trainee. Too young for that. And now without a mother. We don't know that. We don't know anything except that we are alive. Hold on to that, Spider. If my senses are right, this is only the beginning. Chapter 2. He touched down on the grassy field before the farmhouse moments before we did. I held on tight as Kairoat skidded to a stop beside Raolcan. Beside us, Afreti and Lenora were already leaping off Belrude's back while Raolcan spat Rakturan out with the force of someone dispelling phlegm. Rakturan rolled across the snowy ground and spun up to a ready stance, on one knee with his sword held ready before him. I need a drink, anything to wash the taste of him out of my mouth. Raolcan flared fire off in a safe direction. Maybe that would burn the taste away. Hubrick held his hands up. No need to begin fighting all over again. We're here now and we'll deal with things as they stand. You were going to leave me to die. Rakturan's features stood out on his beautiful face as if anger intensified them. How do I know you won't kill me now? I'm a dragon rider of the purple, boy. That means nothing to me. Was that fear he was hiding in his voice? It means lies don't suit me. You should know that. If you don't, then you shouldn't be in the Dominion. I am a foreigner in this land, come in peace to marry one of your own, and this is how you treat me. Hubrick cleared his throat, but there was a warning in the action. Kairoat flamed dramatically to the side, as if to remind Rakturan that he was a dragon, too. Amel, do you remember what happened back there in the throne room? Hubrick asked, tilting his head to one side. Rakturan looked puzzled at his words, and so was I. Of course, Master, I tried to keep my tone neutral. And who was it that tried to kill our Dominar? Baojang, Master. Rakturan's eyes narrowed, but I was more interested in Savette. Her eyes were still white like the heart of the sun and she still had not moved or spoken, like a statue made of flesh. And where is this man a prince of, sworn? Hubrick asked. Should her eyes be glowing like that? Hubrick glanced at Savette. Do I look like a magicka? If Zavan didn't sort her out, then it's up to her now. Get back on point, sworn. Where is this man from? Baojang. There, are you surprised that I treat you like who you are? I fought beside you. And for that, I shall spare your life. The young man, Aldine, strode forward and bowed, his fist to heart, before Afreti. I climbed down from Kairoat and made it to Raolcan's side at the same time that Rakturan sheathed his sword and rushed to Savette. We were both anxious about her, it would seem. Is the farm secure, Aldine? Afreti asked. I didn't listen for his response. He huddled in with Afreti and Lenora but I was absorbed in greeting Raolcan. Are you hurt, friend? I'm whole and safe. Sorry about your hair. I can see it's falling off in chunks below shoulder length. I grasped a handful and it came off in my hand, falling to the ground. It was only hair. It felt good to be close to Raolcan again. Like warm honey. We should never be apart. I agree. What should I do about Savette? I hobbled along Raolcan to where she sat. Rakturan murmured to her, unaware or unconcerned with my presence. Are you seeing strange visions, diviner? He cooed. They are not real except to you. Calm your heart, let your breath flow free. You are safe with me, pale bird. Do not fly away. His tone was so gentle that it almost calmed me, too. He was so calming that when Hubrick spoke his voice startled me. I hadn't realized that he followed me to her side. Born high on the mountain. Blazing bright under the sun's demise. Twice blind but still seeing. The only bulwark against the dark. Watch as the archers declare. Dominion of light. What's that? I asked. I've never heard it before. It's one of the Ibrenicus prophecies. Castellan children know them by rote. They quote them to ward off evil or danger. Why do you say it now? His hand shook as he reached up to Savette, ignoring my question. Come on down now, child. There's a girl. You are safe with us. Steady, steady now. Raolcan rushed around Raolcan to where we were and helped Hubric lift Savette down. She didn't seem to know where she was, and I couldn't tell what she was thinking because her eyes still blazed so brightly that it was impossible to see her thoughts in them. Let's get her inside and then we talk, Hubric said. Afreti threw up a hand. One moment, Dragon Rider. We have more pressing issues. Chapter 3. Afreti leaned toward Hubric and whispered in his ear. He looked at Aldine, who nodded his head, confirming whatever she was whispering, and then gazed around our group for a moment before rubbing his chin and then speaking. Prince Raolcan, you'll wait here with Savette. We will bring warm clothes and supplies out of the farmhouse for you. Until then, build a fire and keep her warm and close. Now you trust me. Raolcan's face was twisted with suspicion. Hubric laughed. Didn't you see how quickly our dragons turn a man to ash? It's not you that I trust. Kyroet will flame you the moment you step out of line. If you ask him nicely, he might even light your fire for you. I'll take care of my bride-to-be. Hubric raised an eyebrow, but he must have been satisfied because he turned to Aldine. See to the dragons please, son. And don't fear for your mother. She is among the most promising dragon riders I've seen and a powerful woman on her own. If she survived the blast, she will be on her way to this safe house. Let's wait patiently before we assume something has gone wrong. Aldine nodded, but his young face was grim. Either way, the Lightbringers will care for you. You are not alone. We should hurry, Afreti said, and Hubric nodded, signaling to me to follow in the Dragon Rider way. I hurried behind him and Lenora behind Afreti as they strode toward the farmhouse. What made that abandoned building so important to our masters? Lenora and I shared a look and she shrugged. She didn't know any better than I did. Maybe they just wanted us to gather supplies, or maybe there was another Dragon Rider here. Savette still needed help, and if we could find someone, maybe a white, to help her, that would be worth it. She is beyond Dragon Rider help. Maybe beyond Magickas could help. This is something more, something bigger and more epic than we've ever seen. We'll ask Hubric when we get a chance. Couldn't he ask Kyroet? Kyroet isn't thinking about Savette right now. He's thinking about who is in the farmhouse. So, there was someone in there. The door was just ahead of us and I saw a simple sign had been branded into the wooden door, the sign of a sun rising over a hill. Was that the sign of the Lightbringers? Hubric had called this a safe house for them. Was it where they went in emergencies? Afreti opened the door only enough to slip through and Lenora slipped in after her. Hubric waited for me to push through the narrow opening, difficult with my crutch, and then followed me, shutting the door with care. That was awfully suspicious. Why take so much trouble to enter a simple farmhouse without opening the door all the way? The front room was stuffed with crates and boxes in stacks as high as my head. From the open tops, I saw fur cloaks and blankets as well as rings of sausage and cheese wheels. Provisions for winter were exactly what we needed. I reached for a cloak, but Hubric shook his head, finger to lips. From a back room, heated voices argued, and we followed the sound through the crates and baskets. We need to wait until the Silvers arrive. They will be here soon from Gurdith in the mountains. We can't afford to wait. We blocked the passage, but it's plain to see where it is and where it leads. Any hesitation gives our enemy a chance to break through and come to us. We should take the dragons that are here and push through to Gurdith before we lose any time. It's fortunate that they arrived when they did. I have need of 2 of them. That voice had so much authority that the others fell silent, the pause lasting as he waited to speak again. A message must be sent to Dominion City. A message is not as important as your life. I will be the judge of that. We broke through the narrow supply corridor and into an open room beyond. The man with the authoritative voice had his back to us, and 2 other men, rough, bloody, and wearing dented armor, stood in front of him. Were they dragoons? As you say, of course, my liege, one of them said, but worry etched deep lines across his forehead. The man with his back to us turned and I gasped when I saw the mask that covered his face. The Dominar, he was alive. Chapter 4. We dropped to our knees, but the Dominar waved a dismissive hand. No time for that. Hubric stood, and I fought my way back up to standing. It's good that you're here, Dragon Riders. I have need of you. It would be easier to tell what the Dominar thought if he didn't wear the mask. Grim are the circumstances and dire the need. We are your servants, Hubrick said, fist to heart. We all joined him in the salute. I glanced at Lenora and her eyes were wide when they met mine. Were we really here, helping the Dominar in the middle of an insurrection? A message must be delivered to Command Eaglespring, General of the Spire, Lord of War in Dominion City. I demand your service, Purple Rider, and that of your sworn apprentice. Of course, Dominar. Hubrick, always focused and ready to spring, seemed even more intense as he replied. The boy says you brought with you another man and a magicka. Is she fully trained? Hubrick shook his head. The girl is Savette High Castellan of Ledris. She is no trained magicka but came into her power during torture by enemies. She may overcome her bounds and perish in the aftermath. The look on the dragoons' faces was grim and one spoke so quickly his words tumbled over each other. Please, my liege, do not allow her near you. We cannot bear another attack today. She'll find better help in Dominion City than where we are headed. The Dominar's words were firm. Your message could be lost if she loses control, the dragoon said. You would prefer her with us, then? The dragoon looked away and the Dominar said, it is done. Now, there was another, a fighting man. The Baojang prince, Hubrick said. The dragoon straightened at his words, swords rasping as they were drawn hurriedly from sheaths. You brought him here, why? Hubrick bowed. My deepest apologies. We did not expect our Dominar, long may he reign, to be at our safe house. We came here to regroup. You were unaware of the secret passages to this farm on the trolley beneath the earth? The dragoon asked. Very aware, but we had no suspicion that they would be used by you. Enough. We have barely enough time to plan for the future without second-guessing the past, the Dominar said. We require you, Green Dragon Rider, your apprentice and the lad who greeted us here to bear us to safety to the mountain hold of Gurdith. Have you the ability to bear Baojang with us as well? Yes, Afreti said firmly. It is an honor to serve. Then so be it, the Dominar said. Gather the supplies immediately and prepare the dragons while I write the message for the purples to carry. He motioned to me and Hubrick gently pushed me forward. I hobbled to the side of the Dominar and he led me to a small table beside an open fireplace. A fire was set but not lit, and in the cold afternoon it felt very bleak. This is your first message, sworn. His tone was kind. Yes, my liege. Then let's make it memorable, I don't think that will be difficult, Lord Dominar. He laughed. I suppose not. Chapter 5. If I had ever, in a fit of fancy, imagined what it was like to be with the Dominar, the great ruler over our vast land, I think I would have imagined bowing castellans, fascinating subjects on bended knee, guards with flashing armor, and a sense of awe over everyone. What I wouldn't have imagined was a man in a cold farmhouse sitting at the farmer's table on a hand-hewn wooden chair. He worked a stub of pencil across paper, carefully writing out his note in a florid hand. He must have brought the writing supplies with him. They were hardly the things farmers might have. The only thing that made him still look like a ruler was his ostentatious clothing and the fanciful mask that covered his face. In this weather, it must sting with cold. Was it my imagination, or did his head droop under the weight now that the attention and pomp were past? He rubbed the mask over his forehead and I noticed it was more polished at that point as if this was his habit. Was he anxious? Was he broken-hearted over the loss of his dragoons and friends? What a strange time we lived in where tragedy and uncertainty swept up common people like me and the most uncommon person in the world in the same moment. Tragedy and uncertainty are both things of which no one is immune. Not even dragons. When he was done, he pulled a white cylinder from his waistband, rolled up the note, slid it into the cylinder and then pulled out a pouch with balls of wax and sealed either end with wax. Usually, I'd put my seal on the missive, but I'm afraid it was lost in transit, he said, turning to me. What would it be like to relate to the whole world through that mask? Amel Leafbrought, sworn of the purple, accept this missive from the hand of your Dominar and give it to none other than its recipient, Command Eaglespring, General of the Spire, Lord of War. Or, if he has fallen, to his rightful heir. Swear this by the truth which is all you have. I'd never done this before. I glanced around, but Hubrick had disappeared. Had he gone to gather supplies? I'd have to do my best. I swear it by the truth which is all I have. I'll deliver the message. Then fly like the wind, sworn. Let nothing hinder you until you reach your destination. I bowed. It felt right under the circumstances. As I straightened, he placed the message cylinder in my hand and I shivered at the touch of his glove against my skin. Who would have thought that I would ever brush up against royalty? It was beyond belief. I'd better be sure not to disappoint him. It was time to fly. Always ready for that. My first mission. My first chance to really be a purple dragon rider. Don't get too excited yet. Bow again and get out of the dominor's view before you dance with joy. I hastily bowed and tucked the cylinder into my leathers before I hobbled away. The dominor's dragoons watched the back door and windows, their movements twitchy. Tell your green rider to hurry, one of them said to me as if a trainee would say such a thing to a full dragon rider. I tried to offer him a calm expression with a nod, but his face grew thunderous. Wrong move, Amel. I hurried out of the room and back into the corridor of supplies. Amel, you have the message. Hubrick had 8 large leather satchels around him. They bulged with whatever he had packed in them. Food, I hoped, and other supplies. On top of the heap, he'd thrown 3 fur cloaks, leather gloves, and woolen cowls. They wouldn't be enough in this weather, but they would have to do. Some sort of fur with lacings was thrown there as well, over boots perhaps. Yes, master. Good. A first message is a very important moment for any purple dragon rider. The dominar gave you a great honor by singling you out for it. He probably doesn't realize that usually we would wait many months before you were given one of your own, but you will do fine. I'll be with you every step of the way. I smiled timidly. First rule to delivering messages. His question was so fast that I wasn't sure what to say. I hadn't been taught this. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. The first rule is, don't lose it. It's not like we can put magical beacons on them to find them if they're lost. Keep it on you. Keep it safe. Check often that you have not lost it. I nodded, gravely. Now, he said, let's get this gear loaded up. It will take a few trips, but we need to be gone as soon as we are able. Afreti is almost ready to leave and we all must leave at once or we risk showing our location to our enemies. By now they may have regrouped enough to watch the skies. I slung one of the satchels over my shoulder and followed after him, glad the crutch he'd given me was rugged enough for the terrain. Things were uncertain and tragic and yet in the middle of it all, a little orange flicker of hope was on my horizon, bright and lively. I was going to chase that for as long as I could. Chapter 6. Hubrick was right about Afreti. As we pushed through the doors and out into the dusk, I could see she had all her dragons lined up in a row. Lenora and Aldine were loading them with gear. Lenora dropped hers and rushed over to me. Amel, your first message. That's so exciting. I smiled in return, pleased but not sure what to say. Listen, she said, not waiting for me to respond. We're going to be split up for a while. But you and I are rising through the ranks fast. We're going to see each other again. I want you to swear that we'll stay friends. She looked both directions like someone was going to overhear us, but everyone else was too busy with their own tasks. Things are getting dangerous and chaotic so quickly and we Castellans have our alliances, our masters have our vows, but you aren't a Castellan and you'll need friends again. So, swear we'll stay friends. Swear you'll call on me when you need help. I swear that I'll be there for you. I nodded, blinking back tears. I swear. And stay out of trouble. Especially if you run into Leng Shardson. That man is going to cause you trouble. She hugged me, smiled quickly, and ran back to her task, leaving me light-headed as I hobbled toward Raolcan. I had another friend. It made me feel all soft and sweet. I told you that more people would see your value. Just keep persevering and one day you'll have more friends than you can fit on my back. Speaking of which, you might need to help Savette right now. As I drew closer, I saw what he meant. Hubrick and Afreti were crouched over Savette and Raolcan. She was curled in a ball on the ground, her too light cloak wrapped around her. Both her hands gripped one of Raolcan's. I dropped the satchel and hobbled over. Hubrick looked up at me, concern on his face. She won't let go of him. Afreti looked up, too, her sharp, beautiful features etched with condemnation. We need to load Baojang with us. Those are our orders. You shouldn't separate us, Raolcan said. His voice was tender, and one of his hands gently stroked her back. Afreti turned to him, frustration emanating from her face. You shouldn't be holding her like that. You've no more rights to her. You were promised to someone else. Raolcan flushed but his words were bold. Your dominar is still considering my request to return my troth to Savette leadress. She needs my protection, especially now. You can see her power as well as I can, Afreti hissed. You want it for yourself and for your nation. This isn't love, it's a power play. It's not. He shook his head, but now the blood drained from his face as Afreti crossed her arms. We leave in 5 minutes and by order, you fly with us. By whose order? He swallowed. Hubric laid a hand on his arm. Prince, we're not friends, but stop for a moment while I talk to you like we are. I'd rather just knock you to the ground and throw you over Afreti's dragon, but I'm feeling gracious right now. Look at the girl, she clearly needs help. The Sky City is in uproar and she won't get it here. If you really care for her, you'll let us take her to Dominion City to see the best magicians there. Rakturan's expression was torn, his hand shook in Savette. You want what's best for her? Hubric asked. Yes, it sounded like a vow. Then let us take her to Dominion City. Why can't I go with her? His eyes looked desperate. Why, did he really care this much? Could that be possible when he knew so little of her? Or was Afreti right and it was all an act to get power? Orders. Afreti drew her blade. And no, I won't tell you whose. Not yet. You're a prince of Baojang. Act like it. There is a war that needs to be prevented and you and I need to do that. You can't chase after a girl when you have a nation to defend. He looked like he was being ripped in two and then he swore violently. I thought that I saw tears in his eyes as he stood, disentangling his hand from Savette's grip. Was it a trick of my imagination? She reached toward him and I stepped forward and took her hand in my own, dropping to the ground to croon in her ear. It will be okay, Savette. I will keep you safe. Stay with her and I'll load the dragons, Hubric said. We'll load her last. She'll go with you on Raolcan. I nodded. Good, best for everyone that way. He strode off and I rubbed Savette's back like Rakturan had before. For a moment, I thought I was hearing things, but no. Raolcan was singing us both a dragon lullaby in our minds. Towering, white in field of blue. Soft and gentle as we flew. Through the golden sunlight bright. Dream of never-ending flight. Chapter 7. We flew through the night, the icy wind biting at us through the fur cloaks and woolen scarves. How do you think I feel? I could use one of those cloaks. For a wonder, Savette slept through most of the night, leaning against my back. Her gentle snores could be heard any time the wind quieted enough to hear anything. She needs the sleep, poor girl. She hadn't had a good sleep in a long time. As if sleeping against my back as we rode Raolcan was any kind of rest. It is compared to what she's been through. Did he know what that was? Some secrets leak out, but I'll guard them safe for her. She's one of us now, broken. Broken and yet terrifyingly powerful. If those blasts of magic back in Vanica were just little bits of her power overflowing, what more could she be capable of? If it doesn't consume her first. The hours passed slowly, made slower by my anxiety about Savette and the intense cold. When had I last slept? I was tired enough to sleep for a week curled in a fur blanket with Raolcan on one side and a raging fire at the other. Wake up. I don't need you to guide me, but you do need to be awake when we fly. Why, wouldn't the straps hold us in place? Would you want me to fall asleep? If I fall, I might not wake up before we hit the ground. I'd be fine, but what about you two? Was he teasing me? Whether he was or not, I worked to stay awake, wiggling my toes in my good foot and the fingers in both hands to try to keep the blood flowing. I had so much to think about, but in the cold, my thoughts just circled around and around on each other. Savette, cold, message, cold, Rakturan, cold, Savette, cold. It makes for boring mental conversation. Get me warm and I'll be as interesting as you like. Look, dawn breaks. To my left, the sky was lightening. Moments later, a ring of gold curved around the horizon. He was right. Day had come. My heart soared at the thought of the sun on me, warming my face, warming my back, warming. Not yet, I'm afraid. In front of us, Hubric and Kairoat leaned into a dive. We followed them, tight on their heels. Plunging through the clouds, I saw the tops of the trees of the forest below us and a long cliff face. Kairoat was aiming at the spot where the trees met the cliff face. We followed and then he turned, unexpectedly, and ducked into a cave on the cliff face, higher than the tops of the trees, but hidden by the curve of the rock. Raolcan followed him and the rising sun was eclipsed by the dark of the cave. It must have been massive to hold 2 dragons. It's going to be tight. A light flared ahead and then Hubric strode forward with a lantern in hand. The cave was very tight. With both dragons pressed against the walls, there was only a tiny space in the middle. Already, I felt it warming up with the heat of our bodies. We will keep warm enough in such a tight space. 2 dragons can really heat things up. Hubric helped me ease Savette down and then he spoke. We need some sleep, or we'll drop out of the sky. Should be warm enough here for a few hours. Then we'll mount up again and find an inn before nightfall. No need to stand watch. The dragons will know if anyone comes. I nodded, sleepily. I didn't need convincing. We'd laid Savette against Raolcan to keep her warm and I lay down next to her, curling up in my cloak, making sure that as much of me as possible was against the side of my dragon. Sleep well, Spider. Food and drink and other necessities could wait. For now, it was sleep, sweet, sweet sleep. Chapter 8. He was trying to help me to form a channel to let off the magic. It filled me up, too much, he said. It will overwhelm me if I can't let it off, but it keeps building, building, building. Savette's voice was thin and shaky as she spoke. I woke to her words. She's speaking to Hubric. Stay resting for now. Magickas draw power from set wells throughout the land and they can contain it within themselves for a time. Too much and it overwhelms them. I know that from my studies. But it's not like that for me. I feel it in everything and I just keep drawing, drawing, drawing on it. And is it letting off? It did when I blasted Magicka Hectoris. It did when I blasted those men trying to kill you. And the explosion. Her words came through chattering teeth. I felt him outside. I could tell he was full of magic. He was going to do something. I didn't know what. I warned the dragons. I rushed towards them down the steps. Magicka Zavan and Afreti Oakboon called to me to stop, but they hadn't expected me to run. I screamed at them to follow, but they just stood there. We escaped. Just in time. The explosion, that's what will happen to me if I don't learn to control this. We'll find you help. Hubric's voice was full of confidence. No one can help. And one will come from the north, burning, burning. Judgment and wisdom born by the flow of spirit to spirit. Do not speak to us of the times that follow. For they shall be as a dream of death as a nightmare walking. Hubric was quoting again, but it was Savette who finished his quote. The dusk shall vanquish all but the covenant until the dawn of the tide. How many of these prophecies were there? Hundreds. They speak of a day of desolation that will come and of the key to the rebirth of the whole world. You know about them, too, Raolcan. We dragons learn them by rote, just as your castellans do. I shivered in the dark of the cave. I didn't like these prophecies. It wasn't good to dwell on hard times coming. It made it harder to grow strong now. And yet, without them how would we hope? How would we know what to do when disaster strikes? With our own wits and good judgment. Have you met people? How many of them have good judgment? And what about when 2 wise people disagree? They were good points, but I'd still rather live without prophecy. I think Savette would rather live without it, too. But she's stuck with it now. What's happening to her isn't normal. Hubric is right to quote the prophecies. Who knows if there may be a key there? Who made these prophecies in the first place? They come to us from beyond, but they were mostly written down by Ibrenicus and others like him. You awake over there, Amel? Hubric asked. I sat up and rubbed my eyes. We should eat, drink and take care of anything necessary before we fly again. We'll stop at an inn for tonight, but we need to put a hard day of flying in first. We slept longer than we planned to. It's almost noon. He looked worried. Will a few hours make so great a difference? It will take days to get to Dominion City. Days. Try weeks. Even flying. The Empire is vast, sworn. It is both our security and our frailty. I nodded and turned to Savette. Do you need anything? Her white, glowing stare made me swallow. I've been taken care of. What were we going to do about those eyes when we got near people? Those were sure to draw attention. Hubric handed me a white silk scarf. When we get close to a town, you'll need to bind her eyes with that. You won't mind, will you, Savette? No, she said, distantly. Better that people think she's blind than that they see what really has happened to her. Chapter 9. There's something special about a hamlet town on the edge of a mountain range. Maybe it's the way that the farms nearby seem to be placed on the top of every rolling hill with their sheep and crops planted out around them like roots to a great tree. Maybe it's the way the people's gates seem more playful and less purposeful. It gives the entire place a feeling of home and family and happiness. We arrived in Linsk, setting our dragons down in the town square. People arrived so quickly that it was like mosquitoes at night. Our mere presence attracted them without any need to do or say more. Have you come from Vanica, dragon riders? The man who spoke looked like he was the mayor. He wore a thick band of cloth around his belly, an emblem stitched onto the front in careful needlework. You've heard news of Vanica then? Hubric asked. Horses came through an hour ago. On their way to Dominion City. They said terrible things, things that can't be true. Around him the gathering crowd nodded, grim expression on their faces. Such as. Hubric seemed undisturbed by their stares and I was glad we'd thought to bind the scarf around Savette's eyes. These people were touchy. Who knows what they would do if they saw her white glowing eyes right now. They said the city was devastated by magickas, one man said. Said refuges are flooding the surrounding towns. Said they'd be here by tomorrow or the next day. How are we supposed to take care of refugees? We can barely keep our own farms profitable with the Dominion's new taxes and trade to Baojang tariff like it is. The mayor held up a hand. The riders said that the Dominar is dead. Do you know if that is true? Sounds like tall tales and stories to me, Hubric said, drawing a thin stick out of a pocket and chewing on the end of it. And while I love a good story as much as the next man, what I really need is a couple of rooms for the night. A couple, a robust man beside the mayor asked. He wore the white apron of an innkeeper. Hubric held up 2 fingers. 2 rooms, hot food, a bath if you have it. 2 silver each, the man with the apron said. You rob me blind. If you want hot baths you pay hot bath price. Hubric scratched his chin and pulled a face before saying. 2 it is then. So, there are no refugees? The mayor asked. Vanica has not fallen. She stood where she always has when I left her, Hubric said, but as to refugees, I don't know. There was chaos in the city when we left. The crowd stiffened at his words. This wasn't what they wanted to hear. Shouldn't you have stayed to fight? A little boy asked before being hushed by his mother. We're purples, boy, Hubric said. Our game is the delivery of messages. And are you delivering one? Hubric winked. Always. Come here. The boy ran forward and Hubric extracted a candy from his pocket and gave it to the boy. I have a message for you, candy makes life sweeter. The boy laughed, and tension dissolved in the ring of people. Well, come on then. Daylight's wasting, the innkeeper said. There's room in the stable yard for the dragons as we've no horses at present. It's up to you to tend them, though. I won't lose an arm to one of them, I can tell you. I wouldn't eat his arm if we were out of supplies and facing down a dinner of grass and shoots. I was looking forward to the bath, but at the same time worry filled me. What would these little towns and hamlets do with the refugees who were on their way? It was this very thing we had wanted to prevent all along and now it was happening anyway. I felt raw inside thinking about it. Chapter 10. Wake up, wake up. I woke with a start. Savette snored in the bed next to me. We'd both bathed the night before and our hair was wet, but she'd insisted that I leave the scarf over her eyes. She'd produced a pair of tiny silver scissors and cut the frazzled ends off my burnt hair without cutting my skin, so she must have been able to see somehow, and to still be in the real world enough to offer an act of kindness to me. Get up, Savette, we need to dress, I said, pulling my leathers back on. There was a pounding on my door. I shoved my boots on my feet, grabbed my crutch and hobbled to the door. The pounding began again, as I unbarred the door, opening it quickly. Hubric rushed through, nearly knocking me down. Close it up again. Are you packed? He helped me swing the door closed and bar it. I worked quickly to strap my crutch to my arm. I put all our things away before we went to bed. Good, he said, snatching up our satchel and helping Savette up. She was fully dressed but struggling with her fur cloak. I scrambled to help her despite Hubric's desperate expression. We need to leave, now. What happened? I asked. I still felt groggy. How long was it until dawn? Chaos. Other travelers arrived throughout the night. They are trying to seize our dragons. He flung the shutters open and, in the yard, I saw a ring of men, at least 30. They were armed, but their clothing and helms were unpolished and unmatched. Who could they be? Ruffians from the countryside around Vannaka. They think they can take us as mounts. Were they crazy? I watched as one man ran toward Kairoat, axe in hand. The dragon gooted flames, lighting him up like a torch. A dark figure pulled back from the ring into the shadows. There was something familiar about him. Definitely crazy. Up on the window ledge, Hubrick said, pulling us forward. Here, take the bag, Amel. I have Savette. I slung the satchel over my shoulder and Hubrick helped Savette climb up onto the sill. Kairoat launched into the air, flying toward the inn. Hubrick and Savette leapt at the same time and Kairoat caught them on his back, bouncing with their sudden weight and then pushing hard with his massive wings to gain height. Maybe this was why they made us practice so many leaping maneuvers as trainees. I scrambled up onto the ledge, swaying there. The bag was heavy, and my dead leg felt like lead. All the muscles around it ached after yesterday's icy ride. I felt sweat forming just from my climb up to the ledge. There was a new pounding at the door and this time I couldn't be Hubrick. In the yard, Raolcan spread his flame out thick as snow as the ring of men focused on their solitary target. Could he hold out on his own? There were so many. Fortunately, they seemed to fear the flame, attacking only in little bursts. There was a splintering sound from the door. Raolcan launched into the air, his wings sweeping a half-dozen men aside as he gained height. I clung to the window ledge waiting for him. More splintering met my ears and the sound of something heavy hitting the door. You might as well open up. A voice called. Fear shot through me. Hurry, Raolcan. The door burst open and the room filled with angry people and gleaming weapons at the same time that Raolcan shouted, jump. I leapt, sobbing with relief as he caught me. Fingertips had brushed my arm as I leapt. It was that close. Why would they try to take Raolcan and Kairoat? Did they have a death wish? People do strange things when fear grips them. We rose above the cloud layer and pulled in tight to Kairoat who snapped half-heartedly at Raolcan. My heart jumped. Don't take it seriously. He's riled up from the fight below. He won't hurt you. I signaled, what now? To Hubrick in Dragon Rider sign. No more inns, he mouthed to me. I nodded. It looked like we would have another cold night flying. At least the moon was bright above the cloud cover and Raolcan seemed energetic. I need to eat soon. A sheep would be nice. We'd have to tend to that when dawn came. How could I ask Hubrick in a respectful way? Don't worry, Kairoat is complaining about it incessantly. He will relent. I could almost feel Raolcan's mouth watering. Chapter 11. Hunting went well for the dragons, or sheep stealing perhaps, but I tried not to think about that. It was a serious crime in our village. A hanging crime. I'd like to watch them try to hang me. They don't have enough rope or a high enough gallows. I shuddered. I didn't want to think about that. Hubrick and Savette and I sat on a grassy knoll eating our own lunch of dried sausages, hard cheese, and crusty bread. Hubrick had the foresight to stock up on supplies at the inn, but if we weren't going to another soon we would have to ration the food. So, no more inns, I said. Definitely not, Hubrick said. When we need supplies, we'll barter with individual farms. When we get farther south the chaos should reduce. Refugees will only go so far, I'm sure. They'll be waiting for the dragoons to come and restore order in Vannaka. And will they restore order? As soon as they can get there. I turned to Savette. Do you need anything? You could take your blindfold off. She shook her head. She seemed to prefer it and it didn't hinder her at all from moving freely as if she could see through it. Maybe she could. Are you finding a way to harness your magic? She shook her head again. Let her be, Amel, Hubrick commanded. It's her fight, not yours. All we can do is be good friends to her right now. He cleared his throat awkwardly. In the meantime, there's something we need to rectify about your education. Had I failed in some way? I felt my heart speed up, my face growing hot. Oh, calm down. You're too conscientious, girl. Here's the thing, you're a cripple, but that doesn't mean you can't fight. It will be harder because you're slow and you can't maneuver or balance as well, but it isn't impossible. I think it would be best for you to use a reach-type weapon like a quarterstaff. It gives you something to lean on and you can use it to maneuver between strikes and defenses. It's why I gave you that crutch. I looked at my crutch curiously. Other than being beautiful and metal, there was nothing weapon-like about it. Here, pass it to me. Hubrick held out his hand and I unbuckled the crutch from my forearm and handed it to him. He took the crutch in expert hands and twisted the carvings just below the hand grip. The top of the hand grip popped open and Hubrick flicked the crutch forward and an inner shaft slid out, doubling the length of the crutch and locking in place. The forearm grip was still there, but the shaft was long now. I'll teach you the basics, and we'll work together on how to adapt the moves to your capabilities. I won't always be around, and we can't send you out there defenseless. You saw how quickly things can go sideways. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. Raolcan was always there for me, but sometimes he wouldn't be close enough to help. Okay, let's start with a simple pivot and see how we can adapt it for you. Watch me. Over the next 3 days, I both loved and hated our practice drills. I loved learning the new skill and dreaming about mastering it. In just 3 days, Hubrick taught me to pivot and spin using the staff like a crutch. He taught me 2 simple strikes from a position where I balanced on my good leg and 1 simple block. I hated it because my good leg was sore and tired, aching almost as much as the bad one now that we were pushing it so hard. It will hurt less as you grow stronger, Hubrick promised, but that was poor consolation during fitful nights of aching sleep. Savette remained mostly silent, sleeping when we slept and eating when we ate. She liked to stay close to Hubrick or me and slept next to Raolcan. He didn't seem to mind. I like her mind, even when it's turbulent and wrestling the great snake of magic that threatens to choke it out. I was surprised to see that Hubrick slept against Kairoat, too. Only a fool passes up extra warmth on a winter's night, he said when he noticed me watching, but I thought it was more than that. They were as close as Raolcan and I were. All purples are close to their riders. He and Kairoat share a mind like we do and like Leng and Ulskiby do. It's one reason we are solitary. We don't need or want many others around. It made a lot of sense. On the 3rd day, I woke to see Savette standing on an outcropping close to where we were camped. She held her arms up as if reaching for the rising sun and I could have sworn that her whole body was glowing, though it might have just been an effect of the dawn and my own tired eyes. In the dawn glows the chosen. Bringer of our enemy's downfall. Light the only companion. On journey to the heart. Hubrick had woken, too, and as always, he had a prophecy to quote. Do you think your prophecies are about Savette? I asked, quietly. He shrugged. If you don't think they are, then why do you always quote them? Habit, he snapped, but I thought it was more than that. I thought he believed them and that he thought they were being fulfilled in Savette. I watched them carefully that morning, certain that I saw him showing her deference in his decisions. Was it just the compassion of an old man for a pretty young woman, or was it something more? Did he think Savette was the chosen one of prophecy? Chapter 12. We found a farm that night and paid the farmer for a place to sleep in his barn. His wife offered some roasted vegetables at a hefty price and a pair of sheep for the dragons. Hubrick paid him the full price without haggling over it. Hot food was a luxury and it was nice to know the sheep wouldn't be stolen as we left the farmhouse for the barn. The farmhouse door closed with a bang and I saw the farmer's wife closing the curtains with a frown on her face. Prophet or not, she wasn't happy with us sleeping in her barn. We'd left Savette with the dragons, so it wasn't like she'd even seen the things most likely to spook her. We want to come and go as easily as we can, Hubrick said, by way of explanation. Haggling arouses interest. You saw their faces. They want as little to do with us as possible, so we accept the dry barn on a wet night and the hot meal with grace and move on. It's the Dragon Rider way. It was certainly wet. Yesterday we had left the snow-covered ground and entered a world of grey skies and constant rain. I was looking forward to somewhere dry to sleep for the night. Perhaps we could try an inn again tomorrow, I suggested. The price for the barn and vegetables had been as steep as any inn would be. No more inns, Hubrick said. How do you get coin, Hubrick? I asked. It wasn't like there was time to make money on the side when you were busy flying the Dominion's messages from place to place. He chuckled. Dragon Riders are issued yearly funding from the Dominar. We are his vassals. The Council of Sky People divides the funds amongst the school and the colors to meet our needs. The color issues us a monthly stipend. We have our own governing body. A council. He laughed again. You really didn't get very far in your training, did you? Of course, we do. Someone has to deal with all the boring politics and administration. Now, enough about this. We have hungry people to feed, me especially, and then you need to train with your staff, and when you're too tired to move I'm going to teach you cards. Is that essential to my training? It's essential to my sanity. It's been more than a week since I played and I'm feeling an itch. His grin was infectious, and I laughed. I didn't usually have much energy left after practicing with my staff, but this sounded like it would be more mental than physical. Raolcan and Kyroat were already lying outside the barn in the dripping rain. They couldn't fit through the barn door. We don't mind sleeping in the rain. At least it isn't snow. That's a relief. And at least Hubric had a pair of sheep for them. It will tide us over until we can get a real meal, although we've been given strict warnings to eat them over that hill in the distance so we don't terrify the farmer. Get Savette settled inside with some food. I'll bring the sheep over to Kyroat and Raolcan. They can't eat them so close to the farm, Hubric said. He shoved the pot of roasted vegetables at me and strode away. I found Savette next to Raolcan. She was caressing his wing absently, her face tilted up to the sky as if she didn't care that her blindfold was getting wet. I could see a faint glow behind it. Was the light in her eyes getting brighter, or was it just because the cloth was wet? Come inside the barn, Savette. We can dry out and eat something hot. She didn't answer, so I hobbled closer and touched her shoulder, balancing so I could still hold our dinner at the same time. Savette. Come into the barn with me for the night. The dragons will be fine. Someone is coming. Her voice was far away. I spun around, peering into the fading light in every direction. There was no sign of anyone but us. Let's deal with that when they get here. He's having trouble finding us. Can you follow me? I still couldn't believe that she could move around with her eyes completely covered. It made me nervous. What else could she do now? Without answering, Savette turned to me and when I began to hobble toward the barn, she followed me. Who do you think we really are, Amel? Are we oppressors because we harness dragons and ride them when they should be free? Perhaps, I said. I didn't like the idea of dragons being bound to dragon riders any more than she did. Or are we the best defense our people have? Where should our priorities lie? Should I be trying to learn more power to defend my people, or should I forsake it and refuse to participate in protest for what they do to dragons? Should I seek to fulfill Hubric's prophecies or wait to watch someone else leap in and fulfill them? Should I let this magical self merge with this shadow of who I used to be, or should I hold them apart to keep them both safe? She sounded so torn, like she'd lost her inner source of guidance. I think you should ask someone wiser than me, I said. I was shivering, and not just from the rain. Who is wiser than you, sweet Amel? Hubric, Afreti, Raolcan. There are many people wiser than I am. She laughed. Modesty is a lovely trait, but it's not entirely honest right now. I think your words are exactly the ones I need right now. I swung the barn door open. The hay was stale, and mildew tinged the air. We walked in together and I scrambled to drag an old barrel out of a corner for Savette to sit on as I rummaged through the barn for supplies. There, an empty crate I could flip over and use as a table. I set to work. I know nothing about magic, Savette, I said as I worked. I didn't have much to offer her, but if she wanted my words, I should think of something to help. But I think I know you a bit. You're honorable and deep. You want to serve your family and the Dominion and you don't want to hurt the people around you or be boxed in. The best way to do that isn't to fight this power. It's to channel it somehow into good. Don't let it eat up who you are. Don't get blinded by ambition or greed. Find ways to make it serve you instead of you serving it. Her arms hugged her and I heard her muttering, "Let it serve me." Hubric entered the barn, banging the door shut behind him. Well, it's a good night to have a roof over our heads. It's only drizzling now, but it will be howling soon enough out there. I brought our things inside. He carried the satchels full of our gear into the barn and looked over the food I'd laid out. Eat first, fire second. We need to dry out the fur cloaks and our clothing. No one wants saddle chap, do they? I shook my head. He nodded briskly and handed around the food and we ate in silence, enjoying something hot for a change. Sheep's not bad, either. For something domesticated. I could almost feel that he was over the hill instead of right outside the barn door. I was getting better at sensing him. I was just finishing the chores after dinner, hanging the last of the wet things up around the flickering fire I'd built over the grate when the door opened again with another bang. Hubrick had gone out to scrounge more wood. He needed to be more careful with that door or we'd be paying for that, too. Savette leapt to her feet. Startled, I turned to look at the door. Hubrick stood on tiptoes as a man shoved him forward into the barn, a knife to his neck. On either side, 2 pairs of intruders spread out on either side to surround us. I gasped. These are the ones we're looking for, all right, said a slight woman with a long scar on her face. There was something familiar about her. No, not her, it was her cheek. She had a symbol tattooed on it that I'd seen before. The sign of a spiral with a line slashed through it. I'd seen one just like it on Magica Hectorus's robes. Chapter 13. My eyes ran over our attackers. The man holding Hubrick was huge, but he was only holding the knife and no other weapons. I knew by now that Hubrick could have fought him if he wasn't ambushed. They must have caught him by surprise when he stepped out of the barn. The weedy woman and the man beside her held swords, but they stood in dramatic poses, not with their feet well balanced beneath them. Hubrick had taught me to stand properly to fight. It was clear that these two were untaught. On the other side of the room, was a young man in Magica robes and a woman holding a quarterstaff. Their clothing and weapons didn't match the others. They'd been pulled together from what was available. Did that mean they were Dusk Covenant? And didn't they know that we had dragons? They know. Had they sent men out to attack out dragons? There was a roar from outside the barn and a flash of brightness like one of them had flamed. What was going on? 4 magicas. We rushed back when they grabbed Hubrick and found them here. They work against us and we don't dare flame your barn. My heart was in my throat. The woman nearest me took a step forward and I shuffled my foot to the position Hubrick had taught me, flicking my crutch into a quarterstaff with practiced skill. 5-2 in here and 4-2 out there. It was time to put my lessons to work, even if it made my stomach churn just to think of it. This one has teeth. The woman in front of me laughed. She braced her quarterstaff like she meant to attack. The cripple, the man beside her frowned. You're worried about a cripple, a blind girl, and an old man. I'm not worried, the woman said, taking a second step forward. That quarterstaff was looking dangerous. Colorful flares and gouts of flames showed through the cracks in the barn walls, but I didn't dare worry about Raolcan. I had my own problems here. My palms were slick with sweat at the thought of my first fight. You're ready. Do exactly what you were taught. And don't worry about us. Kairoet is wily and I am Raolcan. My opponent jabbed at me and I pivoted out of the way, turning my pivot into a block just as Hubrick had taught me. From the corner of my eye, I saw him slip out of the grasp of the man holding him while they were all distracted by my fight. I didn't have time to watch more. My enemy's quarterstaff came whistling toward my head. I dropped to one knee, using my own staff to jab at her. She barely blocked the jab and then I was pulling myself up on the staff and using it to pivot out of her reach again. I spun to where Savette was in view. She threw up her hands, spread wide and forward like she was about to launch something into the air. Wind whipped up around her, billowing her long silvery hair out in every direction. Her hands filled with light that focused into a beam shooting out from her hand. As it left her palms she crumpled to the ground like a dropped doll. What? I felt the crack of my opponent's staff to my ribs. I shouldn't have let myself get distracted. Frustrated, I barely got my staff up to defend myself from the follow-up. My ribs ached, my eyes burned with the afterglow of Savette's magic, and pain seared through my head. As I spun out of the way of another attack I saw Savette's beam had found its mark. The magicka was nothing but a pair of velvet boots smoking on the floor and a black char mark all around where they lay. I gasped and spun. I needed to get out of this defensive stance or I'd be no help to anyone. The other woman, the one with the tattoo on her face, was closing on me from my weak side. If 2 of them engaged me at once, then all was lost. I jabbed toward my original opponent, following that up with a wide, 2-handed strike toward her head. Bewildered by my sudden attack, she missed the block on the second blow and staggered. I took my opening and struck her knee. It must hurt so much to get hit there. Why was I doing this to her? I needed to stop and think about my actions. Stop second-guessing yourself and strike or they'll kill us all. I obeyed. First, I hit her with the end of my staff, a hard jab to the midsection and then a second whack to the ribs. She fell to the floor, but a moment later, I fell, too, my quarterstaff knocked out from under me, and with it, my balance. The tattooed woman leapt on top of me, straddling me and pinning me to the ground. I have the other girl, she yelled. Which one are we supposed to take alive? The blonde, the thick, muscle-bound man yelled, and the woman suddenly had a wicked glimmer in her eye. I heard a cry and the thick sound of something heavy hitting meat. Don't think you can get me that way, old man. I twisted, looking for Hubrick. He was kneeling on the ground, one man dead and bleeding beside him and the man with the knife leaning over him, pulling his knife from Hubrick's arm. We were outmatched and beaten. Was there anyone to rescue us? These magickas are tough. We still have 2 more to dispatch. We can't flame the barn without hurting you, too. What would we do? I squirmed under the tattooed woman and she smacked me in the face. My head rang with pain and I tasted blood. I coughed and sputtered on it. Not so high and mighty now, are we, girl? She asked, sword raised. She was watching me like she wanted to see something on my face before she finished me. Help comes. Raolcan, always there for me. Not me. The door opened, once more with a crash. Could no one treat that door with respect? Through the smoke and dust with moonlight outlining him from behind, the silhouette of a man rushed forward. One swipe of his curving sword and the head of the large thug was severed. He toppled forward as Hubrick dove out of the way. 2 more steps and the figure leapt forward. His plucked my attacker off me and flung her to the side. She hit a beam and fell senseless to the floor. A hand grabbed mine, pulling me up. I was shaking from top to bottom when I finally met his eye. Raolcan. Chapter 14. You shouldn't have left me behind if you couldn't protect her, he said, letting go of me and rushing to Savette's fallen form. What have they done to her? Nothing, Hubrick said with a cough. His hand felt at the wound on his arm gingerly. She did it to herself. Her magic is too strong. She needs help, and right now, she needs time to recover. She needs healing archers, Raolcan said. He lifted her up, clutching her close to his chest as he stood. She looked small in his arms. And what were healing archers? Magical healing. They're a magical place of healing. Don't ask me how it works, only that strange things happen. It amplifies some things and minimizes others. Supposedly, they eat magic and dispel magical ailments. How did Raolcan know everything? I'm a lot older than you and I listen. Besides, I'm good at everything, even eating magickas. He was kidding, wasn't he? He wouldn't actually eat them. You don't need to worry about them anymore. We finished them just before your prince arrived. He brought other problems with him, though. We're under orders to bring her to Dominion City. Hubrick's stance changed slightly, like he was preparing to fight once again. In Baojang we have healing archers. I could arrive there in a week at most and then she could be healed. Raolcan's expression was hard as a stone. A week? It would take us longer to get to the border of Baojang by dragon. How do you? Hubrick's voice faded off. He came on a dragon. You came here on a dragon. Hubrick clenched his fist, his face flushing as he spun and stormed out the barn door. Had Raolcan stolen a dragon? Raolcan carried Savette over to a stack of loose hay on the corner of the barn and laid her down, taking off his rain-soaked cloak and laying it over her. Don't do that, I said. You'll give her a chill. Here, I limped over to our own cloaks where they were drying by the fire. The ones closest to the flames were dry. I gathered one up and brought it to him. Use this. He frowned, but he placed the dry cloak over her instead. He reached for the blindfold over her eyes. She likes it there, I said. His hand hovered over it, as if uncertain whether to believe me or overrule me. Before he could decide, Hubrick arrived with another bang of the door. I clenched my jaw. Seriously, could no one open or close that door without pulling the whole barn down behind them? You brought Enkane, he boomed. Enkane, wasn't that Dashira's dragon, the white one that Aldine rode? Yes, what he does is wrong. Why would she let him ride her? Baojang has tricks we did not know about. But you couldn't just steal a dragon. It didn't work that way. I did what I needed to do, Raolcan said. She needs protection and it's clear that the two of you aren't up for the job. If I hadn't arrived, you'd both be dead. Our pact is clear. Hubrick's words were hard as flint and he spat each one out like he could dent Raolcan with them. A dragon must bear one rider. 1. When his rider dies he dies. 2. When a dragon's rider dies, we release him to die in peace. It's wrong to ensnare him again. I hobbled to the door and peeked out into the driving rain. Raolcan and Kairoat stood with their backs to me, as if they were guarding the barn. In the rain before them, a white dragon crouched. He was larger than the other two, but his wings were ragged, and he was painfully thin, sores like the black bubbles that infected Leng after Magica Hectorus's attack spotted his white hide. I gasped and stepped back, letting the door bang closed. It's wrong to let him rot beneath you as you enslave him for your own goals. Hubrick looked like he might explode. We have a pact with them. I don't, Raolcan said, and your pact is terrible. There is no reason for that animal to die. They aren't animals, I said at the same time that Hubrick spoke. He's already dying. Can't you use your eyes? He needs the healing archers. Just like she does, Raolcan said. Hubrick drew himself up as if he was going to reply but instead he snorted. Help me clear these bodies, Amel. We'll decide what to do with the Dark Prince after that. Decide what to do with me. Raolcan laughed as we made our way to the first body. Hubrick searched the pockets, pulling out a map, a flint, and a few coins. He opened the map and saw our course plotted out along it. These people had followed us from the beginning. A few of the towns along the way were marked with the spiral with a line through it that I'd seen before. Duskcovenant, Hubrick said to me, pointing to the spiral. Their motto is, a way through chaos. The spiral is the chaos, the line the way through. I nodded and he turned to Raolcan. The girl stays with us, Prince. So, yes, if you want to be near her, then it is for us to decide what to do with her. Hubrick pocketed the things he found and motioned to me to search the others. It's better if she comes with me now, Raolcan argued. Only Baojang can save her. We can offer her the healing archers. What can you do? Watch it wear her away to nothing but an echo. Why do you care, Baojang? Hubrick asked. You barely know this girl. I searched through the pockets of the woman I'd knocked out. She moaned and Hubrick rushed over to bind her hands. She had nothing of significance in her possession except a medallion bearing the Duskcovenant mark. In our lands, the prophesies say. Offered then denied. Bride of morning. Dark's only hope of peace. A deal with death he strikes. And from his mouth springs truth. To save the morning light. I'm certain it means she is the key to peace. We have our own prophecies, Hubrick grunted. And do they say things about Savette leaders? Raolcan asked, folding his arms over his chest. I searched the tattooed woman as Hubrick finished with her hands. She had a handful of small things, but nothing that seemed to matter to our purposes except for a letter. Perhaps. Then you know that we must bring her to the archers, Raolcan said, triumphantly. We have our own archers, Prince. You are not the only nation with culture and power. Hubrick lashed the last living enemy and grabbed the feet of the huge man Raolcan beheaded, dragging him toward the door. He was surprisingly strong for someone so old. Raolcan joined him, grabbing the other leg to pull him outside. Then you know we must bring her to one. Where is the closest healing arch? I opened the letter and began to read as they finished pulling the dead out of the barn. I didn't know how they were going to bury them in this rain, and I didn't want to think about it. Dragon's flame. Flame equals pyre. There will be no burial. He sounded like he didn't care. They tried to kill you. The living ones are lucky Hubrick doesn't bring 'em out here for the same fate. I shivered and opened the note. Gather all who are sworn to the dusk in your region and follow Hubrick Dunashifter, purpledragonrider. He is flying between Vanica and Dominion City. Kill the dragon rider and the dark-haired girl with him but spare the girl with light hair. She is to be brought, alive, to Shadowboon Grove among the spires before the upheaval. Send any fast riders you have to Abrekda. Our plans for Leng Shartson did not go as planned, but he remains a thorn to the Covenant and has been placed on the roll of the hammer. A reward is offered for his head. I shivered. On the back of the note was a sketch in charcoal of a large man, buried in the ground up to his waist. Around him swirled the spiral of the Duskcovenant. Chapter 15. What did you find? Hubrick asked, snatching the note from my hand. I couldn't speak, couldn't quite breathe. They'd come looking for us on purpose. They wanted us dead and Leng, too. I knew they were my enemies. I knew that when you fought evil people they fought back. Calm, breathe. They are no match for us, Spider. Do you think Alskibby will let them hurt Leng? His flame is more powerful than my own. He'll snap their bones in his teeth. But they'd come for us tonight and they'd almost succeeded. If Raolcan hadn't arrived when he did, the woman would have sunk her sword into my throat. Calm, easy. It did not happen and it will not happen again. We won't let it. You couldn't guess these things would happen, so you couldn't prevent them. We were relaxed and lazy. They took us unawares. That won't happen again, I promise you. We will set watches. We will stay focused. No one will take you from my care, Spider. No one. I drew a huge breath and let it out, leaning into the feeling of relaxation that came with the exhale. I focused on that and on the presence of Raolcan in my mind, always there, always loving me, so different, so dragon, and yet so mine. Yours, Spider, always yours. So, they are hunting us now, Hubrick said, in the same tone he might use to state the price of eggs. He fished into a pocket and produced a small leather pouch, opening it and taking out a needle and thread. He carefully threaded the needle. They almost killed us. Leng is able to look after himself. Hubrick's frown quelled any objection I might have. He unfastened his leather shirt and shrugged out of it. His grizzled body was still bound with wiry muscles and the wound in his arm spread red blood over his skin. And we will look after ourselves, too. What have they drawn on that letter? Raolcan asked, pointing to the backside of the note where the dark figure was drawn. It looks like an ifrit. Don't be a fool, Hubrick said, gritting his teeth and pausing as he put a neat stitch into his own arm. I grimaced in sympathy. It's just a poor job of drawing. These people weren't exactly prime specimens, if you know what I mean. I glanced to the people tied on the ground. No one was conscious to take offense. Can I read the letter? Raolcan held out a hand. Hubrick grunted and nodded to where the letter sat beside his sewing kit. He put another stitch in place with a grunt. I suppose we're stuck with you now until we reach Dominion City, aren't we? Look, Raolcan pointed at the note. It says, upheaval, with a capital, U. Fascinating. Let's study the exact wording and really parse it out. He punctuated the word, out, with another stitch. No, it means the magical act of upheaval, where they pull ancient creatures out of the ground, Ifrit. I don't believe in Baojang legends, Hubrick said, tying off the final stitch before putting the needle and thread away. But do they believe in you? Raolcan looked up, his golden eyes glowing in the light of the fire, and I couldn't help but wrap my arm around myself protectively. In the dark, minutes after an attack, anything felt possible and I felt incredibly vulnerable. Where is this Shadowboon Grove? Close by. Hubrick shrugged back into the leather shirt without bothering to clean the blood off his arm or wrap a bandage over the wound. If we left now we could make it there by late afternoon. But we are not going there. It's not on the way to Dominion City. We're going to the Healing Archers, Raolcan said. What do you call them here? Spires, Hubrick said quietly. Then we know where we need to go, Raolcan said. I know that I need to go to Dominion City to deliver the message entrusted to me. It seemed very silent when I was finished. A message? You'd risk your friend for a message? Raolcan's eyes turned in judgment on me. There are healers in Dominion City and they will take good care of her, I said, swallowing. It felt too much like last time. Last time I'd had a message entrusted to me, an important one. Last time, Savette had pled with me to break that trust for the sake of our friendship and I'd refused. What should I do now? I'd sworn to deliver the message with haste. I'd also promised Savette that I would take care of her. How in the world could I choose between them? Chapter 16. I looked to Hubrick. After all, he was my master. What did he think? He opened his mouth to speak, but at that moment, Savette groaned. Raolcan rushed to her side, leaving us where we stood, watching him. He gathered her into his arms. You're safe now, I'm here. Raolcan. Yes, I'll protect you. I swear by my blade and my crown that I will not abandon you. She clung to him. It's alive, alive and wild within me. I have no control. I can't hold it in much longer. What you wrestle is like a great anaconda. If you stop fighting, it will turn and squeeze the life out of you. You can't give in. Keep fighting. I'm so tired. She sounded like a small child. I need rest. I'm going to get you rest. He turned and glared at me with burning golden eyes. It was too much. I looked away and hobbled to the door, let it slam open, again, and limped out into the night. I didn't care that it was raining, didn't care that it was dark. I needed Raolcan. He stood like a massive stone carving, guarding our door, and I found his face in the dark and wrapped my arms around him. What should I do? Loyalties are always hard. Where does your strongest loyalty lie? To you. I sensed his satisfaction through our connection. But what after that? I don't know. I promised I would take care for Savette, but I also promised I would deliver the message. To do one might delay the other. I swore to the Dominar, and I can't just go back on that, but Savette is my friend. Personal isn't the same thing as important. True, personal always trumps important. You have no power over the great things of this world. Even delivering that message is a small thing. Your responsibility to a friend is something else entirely. She only has you. And Raolcan. Yes, but without your agreement she has nothing. So, you're saying I should make her struggle a higher priority than the Dominar's message. The Shadowboon Grove is out of our way. It will make us turn from our path to Dominion City, and then, when we do go back to delivering the message, we will approach the city from a different direction. Fascinating, but hardly important at a time like this when I felt torn in two. You miss my point. We are being hunted. If we change directions, it will throw our enemies off our trail. That was a good point. But what about Leng? I ran a hand over my wet face. I was worried about him. They wanted him dead, too. Leng can take care of himself, and so can Alskibi. Don't worry about them. I heard a cough behind me and turned to see Hubric holding a lantern. It's never easy when you are carrying a message. The message always has to come first, he said. When he stopped, it looked like he was chewing his cheek. But what? You look like you're about to say, but. He laughed. But this new information about an Ifrit, that's important enough for a dragon rider to investigate. It has the potential to threaten the Dominion. We are allowed to deviate from our course if we think the Dominion is in potential danger and that we can prevent it or report on it. It's one of two exceptions to the rule of delivering messages first. What's the other exception? Defense of the innocent. In this case, I'd say you could argue both. I thought you didn't believe that was a picture of an Ifrit. I don't like the Dark Prince, and I don't like giving him the benefit of my trust. I laughed. We were on the same page there. I didn't much care for Raolcan either, even if I owed him my life now. I think you want to go there because of the prophecies, I said, mildly. Good guess. I don't like stupid trainees. I'm glad that you aren't stupid. So, which is it? Imminent danger to the Dominion or curiosity about the prophecies? It took all my courage to say something so bold to an authority figure, but this was my first message. I had to make the right choice. Or even protection of an innocent being consumed by magic? Hubric asked, his eyes twinkling in the lantern light. Who says it can't be all those things? Life is complicated. It doesn't fit in tidy rows or measure perfectly by rule. The easier you are with that, the more good you'll do. So, you think we should go to Shadowboon Grove? Raolcan thinks we should go. Raolcan thinks we should go. Why am I the only one who is worried about getting this message delivered on time? Because you're the only one here who is a trainee. Wisdom is acquired, not granted, or at least, rarely granted. The story of Momoda the Wise being an exception, of course. I was beginning to think that I was very uneducated. He shook his head and sighed. We'll work on reading the classics after we deliver the message. And we'll deliver the message after we go to Shadowboon Grove, I said, my voice trembling and my palms sweating as I spoke. Was I making the right decision? If I was, then why was my belly so knotted up? Good choice, Hubric said with a smile. Now, let's get to work. We have lots to do before we leave and no time to rest. Chapter 17. Repacking the dry things and resaddling the dragons was easy enough. Dealing with the captives less so. If we tie them to the central beam, the farmer will find them in the morning, Hubric said. How do you know? I asked. I don't want them to freeze or starve. They were conscious now and one of the girls gave me a terrified look. Are you kidding me? He'll want to be sure we are gone and that if we aren't we pay for another night. Trust me, he sees us as a potential for money and he won't want to lose a coin of it. Even after the magical battle here last night. Common people usually pretend not to see those things. They don't want to look ignorant, so they pretend that kind of thing is normal unless you tell them it isn't. Works in our favor. So, he'll release them when he finds them. Most likely, maybe for a fee. That's a problem, Raolcan said from where he was guiding Savette up on her feet. She clung to him and he caressed her back or shoulders with his free hand, like calming a wild animal. If they are freed they will continue to hunt us. What alternative is there? Hubric shrugged. The same option we had with the dead. We aren't barbarians, Hubric said, crossing his arms over his chest. Raolcan looked like he was going to challenge the decision, but then Savette tripped and he scrambled to steady her, cooing gently to her. I hoped I never looked so foolish if I ever fell in love. Trust me, you and Leng are already almost that bad. Raolcan was just jealous. Jealous of a bald-headed boy who keeps on flying away from you when he should be flying to you. I don't think so. I think that for someone getting his own way, you sure complain a lot, Hubric grumbled. Just be glad we're heading to the spires. That is what you wanted, isn't it? I'm worried about Enkene, Raolcan said, not for the first time since we explained our decision to him. How do we know that he'll be okay? He'll go home to die. It's the right thing, Hubric said, but his grumble had turned to sincerity. It's good that you're worried about him, but you should never have taken him. He agreed to take me. I think he's connected to me somehow. We emerged into the yard where Raolcan and Kairoat were already saddled and ready to leave. It was still cool, but the rain had stopped, leaving everything smelling fresh and new. Enkene stood in the same place he'd been since he arrived, but he lifted his nose when he saw Raolcan, as if he were happy to see him. He is happy. He wouldn't have gone with Raolcan if he didn't want to. His rider is dead, and he is dying, but he's formed some kind of connection to Raolcan. Help Savette onto Raolcan with Amel and you will ride with me, darkprince, Hubric said. I think it should be the other way around, Raolcan objected. Savette deserves the best rider to carry her. I ignored him and so did Hubric. Raolcan helped Savette onto Raolcan and I helped him strap her in place. She was drifting in her own world again, but as I cinched the last strap, Raolcan leaned in and placed a gentle kiss on her lips. Her eyes flared so brightly that the light shone through the scarf and he startled, pulling back. Was it magical? I asked, dryly. What? His voice sounded hoarse. Nothing. I mounted Raolcan and settled my crutch at his side, trying not to grin. Nice burn. There's hope for you yet. Raolcan strode over to Kairoat looking dazed and took Hubric's hand to be pulled up into the seat. The moment their hands met, Enkene snapped at Kairoat. Kairoat snapped back, scrambling forward, but Enkene reared up on his hind legs, neck extended and mouth open, roaring in Kairoat's face. Kairoat shifted his weight, dodging to the side of the roar, and Raolcan was thrown clear. He rolled to the side, scrambling back up on his feet. Were they really fighting? What was going on? Interesting. Enkene is not finished with Raolcan. I thought it might be so. Kairoat spun and despite a shout from Hubric, he clamped his jaw around Enkene's neck, forcing him into the dirt and pinning him there. Well, I see you have a loyal ally here, Hubric called over the scuffling sounds of one dragon trying to twist out of the grasp of the other. It seems Enkene is not finished with you, Dark Prince. Does that mean Savette and I can ride him together? Raolcan was balanced on his heels, squatting slightly and holding his hands out to either side like he was prepared to leap aside or attack at a moment's notice. It means you can ride him, because he says you can and I won't argue with his free will over it. If he attacks Kairoat again, he'll see what a mistake that is, though. And Savette. Don't push your luck. Raolcan nodded and Kairoat let Enkene up, dodging aside when he did, as if to prevent a further attack. Raolcan took Enkene's saddle from where he'd stashed it and started to saddle the decomposing dragon. Oddly enough, the white stood still as he worked, as if he and Raolcan had worked together for weeks. Don't forget, we are people, too. Enkene makes his own choice in this. I hadn't forgotten. I respected dragons' rights as individuals. Just one of many things I love about you. It's strange, Savette said from behind me, her voice otherworldly and distant. He looks like he is dying, but within him, I sense so much life. If I could just draw it back. I shifted nervously. I think you should worry about yourself right now, Savette. We need to get you well before you go messing with life and death. She started to hum a faraway tune, and her tune carried on as we lifted off into the sky, following Kairoat toward Shadowboon Grove and whatever healing or terror might lie there. Chapter 18. The area around Shadowboon Grove looked like the earth had knotted and tangled in on itself. There were rolls and ripples that led to hills and valleys so sudden that there was more vertical land than horizontal. Good thing I was riding Raolcan and not a horse. A horse would take weeks to get through the space we flew over in a few minutes, maybe even longer. You wouldn't like horses. They smell funny. They have bad attitudes. They're lazy. They don't bite their riders' arms off or flame people they don't like. Like I said, they're lazy. Anyone with ambition tries to flame their enemies from time to time. Besides, they eat grass. Grass. It's incredibly gross. At first, the land had been bare and tangled, but now it was tree-covered and tangled. It made for an interesting sight, visually, but there was nowhere to set down for a break and my leg was sore and lower back aching. I needed a bathroom stop and a chance to get a fresh drink. Agreed on all counts. Hopefully, Hubrick was right and we would be at our destination soon. The hills were a little higher ahead and the dragons had to climb higher into puffs of cloud to cross over them. We raced upward and then swooped down over the other side as my breath caught. I still wasn't entirely used to the feeling of nothing between me and the ground. It made my stomach rock when he did things like that, but that wasn't the only reason I felt ill. Beneath us was a dish-shaped valley. At one end, a circle of spires and open arches stood, open to the sky, the floor between them made of a cracked marble that once had been a massive mosaic picturing a stylized dragon. Around the spires and arches and creeping over the marble floor, the forest had grown up. Trees pushed their way upward, roots buried in the cracks, widening them and finding purchase wherever they could. Vines covered portions of the arches, hiding them completely. Most could still be seen, the white stone sticking up like teeth from a lower jaw. We circled around the spires, looking for a spot to land. What was that happening on the other end of the valley? Was that? The ground bubbled and spat like a cauldron on that end of the valley, as if it were made of liquid and not of rock. I thought I could make out tiny figures centered around the roiling mass, but it was hard to tell in the corrugated landscape. They could just as easily be standing rocks and burned-out tree hulls as people. Something about the place felt strange, as if I could tell we were not meant to enter. Nowhere is off-limits for dragons. No one said anything about off-limits. I was much more worried about the bad feeling tingling down my spine. The one that screamed danger. All I feel is excitement. Savette's hands reached from behind me, gripping me so tightly that I could hardly breathe. No, 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 she said. I tried to signal to Hubrick that we shouldn't land, but he wasn't watching my hand signals. Kairoat dove into a spiraling landing, aiming for a spot right in front of the arches. Enkene dove next, and Raolcan followed. I don't think we should land. I yelled. It's fine. Savette's hands were shaking and sobs ripped through her. I tried to pat her hand with mine, but I wasn't going to be much comfort. I had a terrible feeling about this place. Chapter 19. Raolcan leapt off Enkene while we were still landing. Healing archers. Here, this is incredible. The ancients built these, infusing them with magic from self-perpetuating pockets that they say reach to the very center of the earth. If you put someone with magic in them near these, they can do incredible things, heal the whole world. Has that ever happened before? I asked. Savette's grip on me was making me nervous. She was more agitated than ever, and she almost felt as hot as Raolcan. That couldn't be good. Don't you people know anything in the Dominion? Need I tell you the stories of Ash and Harika, Jasper the Golden, Brave Kajasha and the 5 Heads of Landaran? Yes, I'd certainly never heard those tales. They must be from Baojang. Hubrick's eyes traced the arches as he spoke. Born high on the mountain. Blazing bright under the sun's demise. Twice blind but still seeing. The only bulwark against the dark. Watch as the archers proclaim. Dominion of light. We know of the Ibrenicus prophecies, too, Prince Raolcan said, walking towards me. They speak of the chosen one who will save the world, though they are very vague. Prophecies always are. No one believes it's a prophecy if you say, the soup will be too salty on Tuesday. It's just too specific and too boring. People like prophecies to sing. I just wanted to get out of this valley alive. I had the creepy feeling that something was watching me. As Raolcan lifted Savette down from behind me, I turned to watch the shadows behind us. Dusk had descended, and the light was of that certain quality that was almost harder to see through than the black of night. I could hardly tell shadow from object or movement from stillness. A creeping sensation ran up my back and then down again. Steady, spider, steady. I shivered. See something, Amel? Hubric asked. Why did the ground on the other side of the valley look like it was boiling? I asked. Boiling? I didn't see that. Did you look properly or were you dizzy from the descent? I hadn't been dizzy, or at least not enough to throw off my vision. Something had been going on there. What about the Dusk Covenant? Weren't they supposed to be here? Thankfully it seems to be just us, Raolcan said, helping Savette toward the archers. Would you like the blindfold off, High Castellan? Perhaps you'd see better. Overwhelmed, Savette said, her hands clutching at him like they had at me. Save your strength. He lifted her, carrying her toward the wide arches. There was no door, or rather, each arch was one. Why build a structure with no roof or proper door? It could never serve as shelter or defense. Never be practical in any way at all. I needed some sort of defense right now. Did you see something, Amel, or are you just worried? Hubric asked. He was half in the saddle like he was going to decide whether to get down or not based on my words. I thought I saw something. The ground boiling and shadows that could have been people. Or could they have been shadows? I shrugged. Dismount and help us get Savette into the spires. It's common to jump at shadows on your first delivery. Don't worry about it. I scrambled to obey, clutching Raolcan for a moment too long as I dismounted. Anxiety rippled through me, spiky and sharp. I'm here. I won't let anything hurt you. I strapped the crutch to my arm and hobbled after them, carrying a waterskin. We were all thirsty after such a long flight. Savette would need a drink. Would the dragons be fine? We are always capable of looking after ourselves. I noticed Enkene easing himself through one of the arches into the large courtyard beyond. I didn't like looking at him for long. He seemed to be decaying before my very eyes with nothing that I could do about it. Maybe if I was white. No one can cure death. But just to ease his pain would be good. It was funny that he was so taken with Raolcan, of all people. That he would go with him here. Everyone needs a purpose, even the dying. Don't take his from him. Hubric lit a lantern but it was almost unnecessary. Savette stood in the center of the circle, glowing as bright and white as the moon. The bandage around her eyes fell and white light flared from her eyes, lit her face, and haloed her whole body. I stared at her, stunned, then looked for Hubric, catching his eye as he shared my moment of awe. Raolcan, she said, are you close? I'm right here. Can I trust you? Yes. He seemed to be trembling beside her and their words were pitched so low that it felt like eavesdropping to listen to them. In this place and at this time, can I trust you? I swear. I was meant to be your bride. A price to prevent war. An object to be traded from one man to another. You know that. And you also know you didn't want me. You wanted someone less noble, less loyal, less pure. You wanted someone you could control and use. And when you saw my new power you wanted that, too. She sounded so clear, like she was actually with us this time instead of half floating out in her other world. Why are you saying all of this? I want to know if it is true. She took his hands in hers and looked up at him, her face so vulnerable, but so bright that it lit his, too. I don't think you can lie here. I don't think anyone can. Savette turned to me. What did you think of me when you first met me, Amel? The answer sprang to my lips before I could speak it. I thought you were arrogant. And yet you loyally helped me. Why is that? You're my friend. Again, I hardly thought before the answer as in my tongue. See, the truth. Savette turned back to Raolcan. And now I want it from you. Why are you here? I've fallen in love with you. So quickly. I didn't ask for it. It just happened and now, he paused, shaking his head. Now nothing is too great to give you. No risk too much to take, no price too much to pay for your safety. I want you whole and well and happy. Then I can trust you. Above all others. It was a vow. Good. She took his face in her hands. I need help. I need someone to help me walk through this. I can almost feel what I need to do, but I need someone to remind me what is true. Will you stay here with me? Of course, he breathed, leaning in close. I looked away. The moment felt too private to watch. My eyes struggled with the dark behind me after the bright of Savette. I kept blinking away purple ghosts in my vision. Wait, did I see someone creeping up to where the dragons rested? Was that a form, or was it only the purple light? I squinted, staring into the darkness. Behind me, a strange buzzing sound at the edge of my hearing began. I shook my head to try to clear it, but it was no use. I'd lost track of the shape. Wait, was that another? I was almost sure it was. Thunk, a crossbow bolt buried itself in the ground beside me. Enemies, enemies are here, I shouted. Hubrick cursed and I heard the sound of glass breaking as his lantern went out. No time to wonder why. I raced to Raolcan as fast as I could on my crutch, but before I was even there he let loose a stream of flame in the opposite direction. In the light of the flame, dozens of figures raced toward us, weapons in their shadowy hands. Chapter 20. Raolcan took a step backward and I dodged his foot just in time. Climb up quickly, spider. I grabbed the saddle, scrambling up, frustrated as my dead leg weighed me down and held me back. The seconds dragged out like hours as my fumbling movements finally pulled me into the saddle. You'll have to strap in while we launch. It was all the warning he gave before leaping into the sky. I clutched the saddle tightly with one hand, fumbling with the other to attach the waistband. Hold on with both hands, this is about to get interesting. I cinched the belt into place, but the thigh and shoulder straps dangled loose. No time to strap them in. I shoved my crutch into its spot on the saddle and hung on with both hands. Raolcan swooped around the healing archers, flying low as he circled back to where we had been standing. This would have been easier for him without me on his back. Then how would I keep you safe? Dark figures rushed toward the archers, weapons raised and a yell in every throat. How many of them were there? The ground seemed to be crawling with them. Raolcan dove low, belching fire at them as he passed. Clothing and people lit up like torches and I clenched my teeth against the horror of it. Raolcan pulled upward as we shot past the horde on the ground, wheeling up into a tight circle again. As we turned, I saw Kairoat behind us, rushing down a parallel path to the one that Raolcan had just taken, spitting his own gouts of flame as he went. Hubrick gave me a signal, a loop motion of one forearm rolling over the other, again. He didn't even need to order it. Raolcan was already completing his circle and coming back around for another pass. I hated this. I didn't like seeing people burst into flame, didn't want to hear their shouts, didn't. Would you rather watch them kill your friends in the circle? Savette, who you have worked so hard to save. So far no one had made it past the archers. Raolcan and Kairoat had scorched everyone close, but another wave brought our enemies rushing toward the archers. I held my breath. I didn't want to see Savette butchered in there, or Raolcan who had saved my life, or Enkane, even if he was dying. Evil is powerful. It infects people, and dragons, but they also feed it. They choose to embrace it and then we have our own choice to make. We dove low just as the front of the wave was pushing into the archers. Raolcan blasted them with fire and inside the archers Raolcan spun, sword in hand, to dispatch two who had escaped the flames. What choice did Raolcan mean? The choice to defend what's worth protecting or, in faithlessness, to let it be slaughtered by evil. That didn't sound like much of a choice. That's why I'm not shy about flaming our enemies. They would rip you to pieces if they could. I will not allow that. The attack broke with Kairoat's next burst of flame. Rather than running into the inferno, the black wave of shadow fell back. I looked to Hubrick, who made two pointing motions that meant pursuit. Raolcan pulled in next to Kairoat and we flew after them. What did you do when they fled? It seemed wrong to flame them when they were running away. And let them regroup. You'd have to fight the same battle twice. I looked nervously over my shoulder at the healing archers. Savette stood within, Raolcan in front of her, his sword held high. Her glow had grown faintly blue and now wisps of light floated out from her, like vines spreading out from their root. They formed a mandala pattern of light over the ground, spreading outward one layer at a time. There's something strange about our enemies. It's almost as if they're luring us out from the... Raolcan roared and reared backward mid-flight. I screamed, clutching the saddle, just trying to stay in place. What was happening? I gripped the saddle as Raolcan arced to the side. Beside us, a dark force hit Kyroat, sending him spinning end over end until he crashed into the ground. I felt the reverberation of his crash in the air. What would it have felt like on the ground? Ifrit. Raolcan's tone felt frightened, and no wonder. As we curved around, I finally got a good look at our enemy. My own heart stuttered in my chest. A dark figure of wispy, ever-moving shadow stood before us. When the shadows moved too far apart, a red glow of fire shone through from the heart of the creature. Shadow bubbled the ground around him, swallowing up any of the human enemies that got too close. There were still hundreds of them, but worse, much worse, was the figure bubbling up from the ground behind him. Inside a ring of magickas, a second Ifrit was rising from the earth. Chapter 21. Raolcan reared up again, this time spurting flame at the towering Ifrit. The flames were so close that they felt hot against my skin and hair. I held on tight, terrified as the Ifrit swiped at us. Raolcan dove, sweeping to the side as he circled around the Ifrit, flames spurting out as he attacked. Across the valley, Kyroat recovered himself and leapt back into the sky, but the Ifrit was fast. He spun to face us and flung something in his hand toward Raolcan and me. Raolcan flamed, but the shadowy mass he threw at us was impervious to the flame. It hit us, darkness surrounding us. I had the feeling of tumbling over and over, but no reason to think it was really happening. I couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't feel. Terror filled me. I'd never expected to fight a demon from the back of a dragon. I'd never even expected to be on the back of a dragon while he spat flame at an enemy. My legs and arms were trembling so much that I couldn't get him to stop. My heart was racing too fast. I couldn't catch my breath. I bit my lip hard, tasting blood. Something jarred me, shaking my grip loose on the saddle. I clutched the safety belt with both hands, hoping and praying that the leather straps would hold. My vision cleared suddenly, and once again the moon and stars were visible. I tried to still my breathing, tried to see what had happened. Raolcan crouched on the ground, and I dangled at his side, held in place by the safety straps. We were on the steps of the archers. We must have been flung by the Ifrit all the way across the valley. Somehow, in the chaos, the army of human shadows had surged forward again. They were minutes from overtaking us. In the air, Hubric and Kyroat wheeled and dove, spitting fire as they attacked the Ifrit again and again. Kyroat favored his left side, only making right turns. Was he injured from his fall? Yes. Raolcan, I asked, pulling myself back up on the saddle. Are you hurt? Yes. I gasped, loosening my safety straps and grabbing my crutch before dismounting, awkwardly. How badly was he hurt? I stepped back, looking him over. One of his wings was crumpled to his side. At my thought, he pulled it in, protectively. Blood leaked from his mouth and nose and he trembled like a leaf in the wind. Raolcan, no. I ran to his face, wrapping my arms around his head. Can you fly? No. I could tell he was holding back pain. That's why he didn't say more. Can you get inside the archers? I asked, anxiously. Our enemies rushed across the landscape, the Ifrit at their head. Kyroat's flames did nothing to stop him. I'll try. Raolcan pulled himself forward on his forelegs, his right wing fighting to help pull him. His back legs dangled uselessly behind him. I knew that feeling. I knew how helpless it felt. I tried to make my thoughts strong and hopeful to help him. After all, this place was called the Healing Archers. That must mean there would be healing here, right? What were we going to do? Our dragon's fire couldn't stop the Ifrits. Our enemies were on their way. We had one warrior who could wield a sword and one girl with magic who had no idea what she was doing. I chewed my lip and tried not to think about it. I tried not to think about how afraid I would be when men with weapons rushed into where we were. I tried not to think about what it would feel like to die. Tried not to think about what it would feel like to watch Raolcan die. It was impossible. It was all I could think of as Raolcan finally pulled himself through the archers and took a place next to Enkane within. At least we'd die together. Worth it. You've been worth everything. So had he. Chapter 22. Savette flared like a candle lit in a dark room. Her light increased suddenly and powerfully and the mandala around her began to spin as it spread. She rose in the air, her hands thrown outward to either side and her blank face lifted upward, hovering above the ground. She was a vision of purity and light, but tears tracked down her face, flowing constantly. Was she hurt, too? It hurts her. I thought it was supposed to heal her. What was it doing to her? Exposing the truth. Truth is very painful and goodness flares violently in the presence of evil. Was she reacting to the coming Ifrit? Was she trembling? Can your dragon fly? Raolcan yelled to me as I hobbled under the arches and took a place between Savette and Raolcan. I was worried about them both. No, can Enkane? I don't think so. He tried to fly when you were fighting, but he couldn't get into the air. The Ifrit outside roared and Raolcan cursed. If Hubric would just come back, we could flee aboard his dragon. Do you think he can carry 4 people? I didn't bother answering. I wouldn't leave Raolcan. Hubric wouldn't ask me to. I knew that without having to ask. I had a feeling that Hubric wouldn't leave me, either. He'd sworn protection over me. The Ifrit hit Kairoat with the same shadowy ball he'd flung at Raolcan. Kairoat was flung across the valley, encased in a sphere of darkness. The first wave of our enemies hit the archers at the same time, rushing up the steps toward us. I braced with my crutch quarterstaff and beside me, Raolcan leapt forward, sword slashing across the chest of the first man to dart through an arch. Savette screamed as a wave of white burst from her, growing wider as it raced outward. Everyone in its path disappeared as the wave hit, but not the Ifrit. He roared, his huge hand grabbing the arch in front of us and pulling it up from the ground. Soil and rock fell from its base as he flung it aside. Savette hit him with blast after blast, keening in pain as she fought. I flinched at the sound, but I had my own work to do. A few members of the Duskcovenant snuck around the sides of the Ifrit, coming at us from either side. Raolcan blasted the ones that came his way with scorching fire, but his head was leaning on the ground now. His strength fading, he seemed too dazed to even think clearly. Amel. I'm here, Raolcan, I'm here. I moved to shelter him, fighting off a stray attacker until he walked into the path of Raolcan's fire. Raolcan blasted him away. On the other side, Raolcan fought, sword carving through his enemies. The Ifrit leaned forward and took a step into the healing archers. Savette screamed, Raolcan. And Raolcan darted away from his still-living opponents, rushing to put himself between her and the Ifrit. The Ifrit lunged for him and he dodged, tripping and falling backward, his sword falling out of his grasp. Savette caught him, clinging to him from behind and above him. She was rising further off the ground, tears pouring from her eyes and the light so bright that her skin was translucent, her hair a mass of silvery wisps lit with blue-white light. She wrapped her arms around Raolcan's dark chest, leaned her head on his shoulder, and closed her bright eyes. Raolcan's shut, too, as if he were drinking her embrace in, one last time. I held my breath. If only hopes could save. If only wanting something could hold back evil. I hoped with all my heart, but even as I hoped I was certain I was watching her last living moment. The Ifrit leaned down so that his wild face was inches from theirs. His mouth opened, roiling lava moving within. On his head were 10 horns, made of dancing smoke and his eyes were pits of fire. His lips moved as if he were forming a word. And then, as if they were one person, Savette and Raolcan opened their eyes. White light flared so brightly that I couldn't see. I was thrown off my feet, landing hard on the ground and smacking my head. Everything was gone in a moment of pain and light. I coughed and gasped, my fingers reaching out but finding nothing but the cold forest floor. Blinding pain filled my head and purple after images clouded my vision. I pulled myself up on hands and knees, shaking my head to try to clear it. Thank you, Hubric, for a crutch that stays attached. By the time I pulled myself to my feet, my vision had cleared enough to see. The Ifrit was gone. The attackers before us were gone. I'd been thrown out of the archers. I hobbled, stiffly, back to them. Savette and Raolcan were on their knees, holding each other in a tight embrace. Savette's glow had reduced again, but her eyes were still white as the center of the sun. Raolcan. I looked, to where I'd seen him last. He lifted his head, stood, and shook out his wings. Your wing. The look he gave me was the closest thing I'd ever seen to a dragon's smile. He leaned forward and rubbed his cheek against me. You're alive. Me. He was the one I'd been worried about. We're all alive. Beside him, Enkane stood and shook like a dog, his wings unfurling. Far from the patchy, broken thing he'd been just moments before, he was completely whole, his white scales shining in the moonlight. They really are healing archers, I said in wonder. A tiny prick of pain filled me as I realized I'd been thrown from the archers at just the wrong time. If I'd been in there, like the dragons had, when the flare of Savette's power peaked, would I be able to walk on 2 legs now? I pushed the thought aside. This wasn't the time. Raolcan and Enkene were healed. Savette and Raolcan were still alive, murmuring to one another. What about Hubric? Where was he? Let's look. Come on. I hobbled to Raolcan, climbed onto his back and held on tight as he leapt into the air. The cool air of night seemed so fresh and calm for a place filled with such violence. Where was Hubric? There. Kairoet emerged from the night, Hubric on his back with a grim expression on his face. He was dirty and tired looking, but whole. He motioned for me to follow and we landed outside the archers. Can everyone still fly? He asked, but it wasn't to me. I could tell because Kairoet cocked his head as if he were answering mentally. Hubric turned to me, we need to go. Now. I opened my mouth but he silenced me with a single motion. The ones who live fled. They had a second Ifrit with them. Tired as we are, we don't dare stay here. We can talk all about this later. Tonight, we flee. Of course. Raolcan, Hubric called. Bring Savette. We must flee. Not a moment to spare. Raolcan and Savette emerged from the archers, but it was not Raolcan leading Savette. She led him. Raolcan's eyes were blazing with white fire, just like hers. Read more of Amel's story in Dragon School, First Message.